everyone. Good morning, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. You're very welcome to the first ever Meristem and Rift Trust webinar. And today, well, I'm going to be the moderator. I'm the moderator for today. My name is Mirabel Aliladia, and I am the CEO of MINC, and we are a public relations agency, and by proxy, Rift Trust public relations consultant. So today, the topic is very interesting. I think one that we're all going to find to be very beneficial. And of course, we're going to be uncovering how a multiple citizenship is essentially an advantage or an enhancement to your investment, your global investments, right? So today's topic, of course, is wealth planning, the multiple citizenship advantage. But before we start, I would love to introduce our distinguished panelists. We have three lovely gentlemen and very qualified to definitely lead this panel. And so I'll start with Mr. Ike Osakwe, who is a distinguished board member of Owando PLC. So I'll just go into a bit about Mr. Osakwe so that we can know exactly where his experience stems from, and of course construct whatever questions you have for him, and you can leave that in the Q&A as soon as we get started. Mr. Ike Osakwe is a chartered accountant and practicing management consultant. He holds a bachelor's degree and master's of chemistry from the University of Oxford, and is an associate member of the Institutes of Chartered Accountants, both for Nigeria and for England and Wales. Initially trained for 4 years at KPMG Audit in London, he returned to Nigeria in 1980 and established a managed Grid Consulting Ltd, a firm that specializes in financial management advisory for commerce, industry, government, and NGOs. In 2018, he retired and sold this company to an American corporation on whose US board he now sits. Mr. Osakwe has over 40 years of experience in financial, strategic, and corporate planning, as well as organizational and financial management systems development, both in Nigeria and internationally. He has brought this vast wealth of experience in the dynamics of most major industrial sectors to bear in his work on corporate governance. Mr. Osakwe has held several board appointments and currently serves on the board of Notori Chemical Industries PLC, Proton Energy Ltd, and DAI Global LLC. He's also a member of the governing board of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, FIRS. In this non-executive role, he chairs the FIRS Board Committee for Revenue and Finance. He previously served on the boards of Leadway Pension, PFA, Red Star Express, Nigeria Ltd, and chaired the boards of Thomas Wyatt, Nigeria PLC, and UBA trustees. You're very welcome, Mr. Ike Osakwe.
Thank you very much. Good morning, fellow panelists, and good morning, all attendees to this Zoom conference.
Good morning. Thank you, sir. Good morning. Good morning. It's definitely a pleasure to have you here. And on to our next panelist, Mr. Suleiman Adedokun, who is the Group Deputy Managing Director of Meristem Securities Limited. Mr. Suleiman Adedokun is the Deputy Managing Director of Meristem Securities Limited. He's also the Managing Director of Meristem Wealth Management. Mr. Suleiman started his career with Security Swaps Limited and later the Nigerian Stockbrokers Limited, from where he joined the Meristem Securities Limited, the company he now manages. He pioneered the establishment of Meristem Wealth Management Ltd, a wholly owned subsidiary of Meristem Securities Ltd, and currently manages the wealth management firm that is Meristem. Mr. Suleiman is a CFA chartered holder, a member of the CFA Institute and Society, as well as a seasoned accountant with a wealth of experience spanning across the various sectors of the capital markets. He holds degrees both in accounting, banking, and finance. He is an associate member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, Chartered Institute of taxation in Nigeria and Chartered Institute of Stockbrokers. He's also an authorized dealing clerk on the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. Mr. Suleiman also attended several trainings in Nigeria and overseas, including practical portfolio management for equities and bonds, Beaufort Institute of Business Training Limited in South Africa. He also has a certificate in financial asset management and engineering, and in Switzerland. He also has a risk management for corporate leaders and more. He's also an alumnus of the Harvard Business School. You're very welcome, Mr. Suleiman.
Thank you very much. Good morning, colleagues, panelists, and good morning to all attendees. It's nice meeting you today.
Thank you so much, sir. Such a pleasure to have you here. And finally, to our third distinguished panelist of the day, or of the hour, dare I say. We have the country manager of RIP Trust Nigeria Ltd, Mr. Zubairu Kadiri. After spending over a decade as a business re-engineer and wealth manager across West Africa, he currently serves as a country manager for RIP Trust Nigeria. He has partnered with a team of asset professionals to champion SAR Sadara Advisory as an investment management outfit with footprints across West Africa to support African high net worth individuals, CEOs, and top executives seeking to maximize their asset value through portfolio consolidation and acceleration within record investment turnaround time, whilst focusing on low risk investment opportunities across Africa and the global market. He spent over a decade working as a wealth compounder and a management consultant, working with HNI, CEOs, and top execs to re-engineer their business for optimum wealth creation and diversify their asset portfolio to increase their yield while safeguarding their existing assets. He's currently a board member of Franchise Business Development Services, FBDS, and a faculty member of African Franchise Institute, both currently operating from Lagos, Nigeria. You're very welcome, Mr. Zubairu Kadiri.
Thank you very much, Mirabel. Good day, my fellow panelists, and welcome to all attendees. It's my pleasure to be here.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much, Mr. Kadiri, Mr. Zubairu. We're definitely looking forward to unpacking the wealth of information that this webinar promises. And I'm sure the guests, our distinguished guests, can agree that we have indeed selected the panelists very strategically, and they're all very qualified to lead this conversation. So without further ado, we're going to get right into it, and I'll start with Mr. Osakwe. Obviously, from all we've seen, you have over 40 years of veritable experience as a chartered accountant, management consultant, and seasoned investor, both locally and internationally. Can you please share with us your thoughts on why you considered obtaining a second citizenship, and how is this benefiting you, when you compare to when you didn't have one? Yes.
Thank you for that. I spent 40 years of traveling a lot. Not so much anymore, but you can go back to those days. I think many participants will know where you have to head off to London on Monday, you're back on Wednesday, they say you have to go somewhere else, because particularly lawyers do that, and us accountants would do. What was always difficult was visas, because any country outside of maybe the UK, you have to go line up for a visa, and sometimes actually decline a meeting because having a Nigerian passport, you couldn't get a visa at the time. So really, I wanted a second passport because for travel and for investment, dealing with the travel first, you got to a point where embassies would hold your visa, your passport for 2-3 weeks. That means you can't travel, okay? You have to line up here, and then there will be these agencies that will now help you. have only just picked up, but still there are issues. So I find that with each year, things look like they're getting worse. Every day we say, okay, with Nigeria to get better, things will change, our foreign relations will change, etc. It isn't. So I thought before time runs out, let me just get myself another passport, which allows me to go to most of those countries which I want to visit for business or for pleasure with far less hassle. Countries in Africa, it's crazy to believe, to realize that, yes, we're the giant of Africa. There are many African countries that will not let you in as a Nigerian unless you have a visa, which takes time. And yet, a foreign passport, they let them in. And I thought, look, we could sit saying Nigeria is this or Nigeria is that, but why don't I just get that passport and make it easier? Africa, Middle and Far East, Europe, Caribbean, South America, they're all there on the list. And so I feel I got my second passport. I'm very happy I have, and I plan to continue using and testing it and see where I can go without having to do the usual lineup. I live in Lagos, and for many of these smaller countries, you have to fly to Abuja, stay the night, find an agent, etc., etc. It's just not convenient. So that's the travel part. Another part that affects the travel, you know, I'm home abroad. The kids come and go. We know Nigeria's political condition is not the best. What does tomorrow have to offer all of us? We are all sitting here, the elections are coming, we're hoping we can change things for the better. We all pray that whichever politician wins will now really sit down and start sorting things out. But in case they don't, a lot of my friends in Lagos, they call it Plan B. Okay, so perhaps with all the traveling, second passport just helps me deal with Plan B if I ever need a Plan B. So that is another reason. The reason which I haven't explored yet is that of investment. Yes, I've invested abroad as a Nigerian. It's often not easy because the banks particularly will look at you as if you're a criminal even before you started. When things go wrong, you find the institutions are not apologetic, and many of the processes take a very, very long time to process. As a Nigerian, you want to open a bank account, say in Paris, or you want to open one even in London. Sometimes the answer is no. But if you eventually want to achieve it, it may take you 6 months, 6 to 8 months. Well, with other foreign passports, it's not, or should I say for other countries, it's not the same. There's something interesting about being Nigerian. Anyway, that was something I had in mind. I haven't explored it yet. I know I can make foreign investments now as a national of a foreign country, of a second country, with a lot less hassle. I hope I'll explore it in the coming years. So I think in all, just looking to travel quickly without much wahala, that was my main reason. I've sorted that, and I hope in the next year or so, I will then also explore the issues relating to investments. I trust that has answered your question.
Yes, definitely. I think it's clear. So I think you've identified mobility and leisure, and those are very key to even like lead a quality life. And one thing that I know that's very important in terms of second citizenships is a RIF trust. They will typically say SMILE. You know, so for security, for mobility, for investment, for leisure, and in your case, entertainment. It could be education as well. So I think it's clear you've highlighted what motivated you to acquire a second citizenship, and it's definitely very relevant. Another thing you mentioned is the Plan B, which is very interesting because when you really dive into it and you ask people questions, they're not looking to leave the country. You know, they're not looking to quote and unquote JAPA, they're looking to actually enhance being Nigerian. I think everyone is proud of that identity as a Nigerian deep down, but ultimately we just want more, a better life, a better quality of life. If it's mobility, if it's security, if it's investment, if it's lifestyle, if it's entertainment. So I'm not surprised that you've mentioned those two, because those are, I think Zubairu would agree, because he's gonna speak next, but those are very valid clients' motivations. So I'm just going to quickly go over to Mr. Zubairu. I think we've already started this conversation already, so let me just ask it plain out. So what incentives does a multiple citizenship have on foreign assets and investments?
Thank you very much, Mirabel. Thank you, Mr. Sakwe. I think you hit the nail on the head, speaking from a very personal experience. And to answer the question on the advantages that the multiple citizenship has on your foreign asset investment and basically your well-being in general, I like to contextualize a few things to put it in perspective. Different people have their motivations, like Mirabel mentioned. At Rift Trust, our motivation is SMILE. The client motivation is around SMILE: security, mobility, investment, leisure, and like Mr. Sakwe said, entertainment or education. One thing we've come to find is, especially since the pandemic and the lockdown drama, the awareness came to the fore for a lot of people. What was that? We choose the cars we drive, we choose the home we live in, we choose the business we start. We can choose these things, but none of us chooses the place of our birth. So by default, none of us chose our starting nationality, but we have to bear the burden of that nationality for the rest of our lives, except we decide to do something about it. So we find that in our experience, especially in the last 2 years since the pandemic, a lot of people came to a strong realization that global access is probably the greatest capital in the world right now. It is what everybody wants to have. People do not want to be limited in what they can do, especially when the world is a global village today, and we can just jump on our mobile devices and see what's happening somewhere else and believe that we can do those things, we can be a part of that value chain, and we can invest in those places. And that's why we say the 21st century biggest capital is speed. Now, global access is what everybody is looking for, or I would say the global access is the currency for which people want to buy speed. And let me explain what I mean by speed. Everybody wants their life to be fast-tracked. Everybody wants to maximize their life in the fastest possible time. So at Rift Trust, we have this acronym, we call it SPEED. This is what SPEED means. S is for security. People want to have an alternative option. Whether you like it or not, the dynamics of the acts of God in life can put you in a disadvantage without notice. People just want to have an insurance policy for that, to say, if today my current identity is not going to give me a leverage, I have an alternative identity that I can leverage on, and I can protect myself, my loved ones, and my family, not only for the present, but for the future. The next word on the word speed is P, privilege. Mr. Osakwe made a very good explanation of that. While some people have to wait for an average of 3 to 4 weeks to get a visa, some other people just make up their mind to travel, buy a ticket, and they're on the next flight, which means those people get to the front of the line before others. That's privilege. And everybody in the world would like to enjoy that privilege. Some other people are looking for endowments. In our line of business, we've processed citizenship for a lot of tech startup founders who today, their businesses have the opportunity to collaborate with strategic partners in other regions, in other parts of the world. But those meetings require, first and foremost, a travel, require certain bilateral exchange benefits, which they are not enjoying because of their current citizenship. As a global brand across 22 countries with offices, we are meeting people who want to connect with other strategic partners or access other grants and benefits in other markets all around the world, but they are not able to. So people are looking for endowments and they want to be able to access it, but their current identity is a limitation. And then we also see a scenario with exemption. I classified exemption very well, which is the second E in the word speed. Whilst one person goes to the airport straight and buy a ticket and is off, another person needs to wait for an average of 3 weeks to 1 month and sometimes 2 months just to get a visa. So whilst one person is enjoying an exemption, another person is not exempted. When you look at the educational system of the world, the quota system for education is also an interesting thing. Setting identities will always have to deal with quota challenges because of the advantages that those others' identity enjoy in a bilateral relationship. And finally, dominion. A lot of us here are building wealth for not just for the present, but for the future. We are building for our children and their legacy. Question is, when you look at things like currency devaluation, security of your asset, not only in the present and the future, how do I secure the future of my assets and my words for that asset so that even when I'm not here, they are okay, which is why we say dominion, legacy planning. So I just try to explain this word in speed. We are all looking for speed, looking for security, privilege, endowment, exemption, and dominion. And it's a motivation for most people around the world. And that is why considering a second citizenship is very key because, like I said, you didn't choose the current identity you have or had, but right now you have the opportunity to choose an identity that benefits you and gives you global access. I hope I did justice to the question.
Mr. Kadiri definitely did. I think this even enhances Mr. Osakwe's answers even further. And now I'm even more keen to hear what Mr. Sulaiman has to say with this question. And just a quick reminder, if you have any questions, feel free to put it in the question and answer chat box so that we can answer, or any of the panelists can answer the questions. So Mr. Sulaiman, can investors global assets from part of a portfolio managed by a local, asset manager? Let me just take the question again. Can an investor's global assets form part of a portfolio managed by a local asset manager? You're on mute, sir. You're on mute.
Thank you very much, Mirabel. And I think that is a very important question, really, in all this. Getting citizenship exposes you to foreign investments. And you have many people that have participated in foreign investment, and they have gotten their figures beaten up. Just because of the fact that the global investing activities is complicated and you need to have knowledge of it. Global assets that you have actually needs to form part of what the local managers should manage, because of the fact that the local manager understands you. He understands the risk and the returns, and he understands you very well, vis-a-vis what you want in your, for financial affairs. If you have investment offshore and you also have investments locally, and you don't bring that investment offshore to the knowledge of your local manager, what happens is that you can be investing in the same thing offshore as you are also investing locally, which can expose you to the risk, a concentration risk. You can imagine a situation whereby you have investments, everything you are doing in Dubai is real estate. Everything you are doing in Nigeria is real estate. And there's a global slum in properties. What you have exposed yourself is a huge risk, and then you will be stranded for liquidity. As I said, Mr. Osakwe made mention of what challenges people face when they invested offshore. In terms of the losses, people have no interest. Many of the foreign investors, many of the foreign portfolio managers, they don't care about you. They care about what they can make. They invest in what, they believe that is good for you. It may not be what is really good for you. That's that, which is different from what a local asset manager will do for you. And again, there's a bit of representation. If I'm your local manager and you have global investments, I must know what are those investments and whether they are actually good or not good for you. And I can also integrate those global investment into the portfolio locally and do a regular reporting to you. What I do as a local portfolio manager is to be your partner, a partner that considers your situation, a partner that give you a global view of your investments, both local and offshore, a partner that also assess the risk that you are exposed to globally, and a partner that also watches out for your risk profile, whether you are meeting up or you are not meeting up. If you ask me, the best thing for you to do is that no matter where you have your investment, Dubai, UK, US, or in other parts of the world, it is very, very important for you to have a local manager who can constantly interface with your foreign investors. Foreign clients and foreign investments. I've had clients that they have foreign investments until we interface with them. It is then you discover that even those investments are not even good for you, or they are actually something that you don't need to own. This is because a local partner has knowledge of both local investment activities and also global investment activities. And this helps significantly. So as a firm in Meristem, what we actually do is to work with clients that have investment both local and globally as a way of managing their global investment and also optimizing the return on those investments. And as Zubero said, citizenship gives you a global mobility, but you must optimize the value of that global mobility by having your investments in view. And that can be properly done by a local asset manager who assesses risk and optimizes return for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Suleiman. So I think key takeout from here is it's important to always have your local asset manager aware of your global investment portfolio, just to avoid like double investment and also just for due diligence purposes. So the goal is to actually make your local asset manager a partner, right?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. I think that is really clear. But out of curiosity, I have to go back to Mr. Osakwe here. And after everything we've heard Mr. Suleiman say, I'm sure we're all curious. So I want to ask you, is it not too personal, but then how do you, after bearing all of this in mind, Mr. Suleiman has said, how do you intend to use this to benefit yourself in terms of investment? So how do you think, I know you mentioned earlier that you haven't really gone into that part of the investment part of the dual citizenship arrangement yet, but how do you think this can actually benefit you? All Mr. Suleiman has said, just more subjectively, yes. How can this benefit you? You're mute, sir.
Okay, thank you. Well, it hasn't yet, but it will. As I said, I plan to explore the opportunities.
Okay.
I noted Zuberu's comment about speed. I'm looking at the D in speed. Somehow I'm retired, and guys like me, we're looking to make settlements for the next generation. Dealing with that is not as simple as it sounds. And the more jurisdictions you bring into play, the more complicated it will get. And so I would, even though it wasn't my question, Mr. Suleiman's response, I will fully endorse. My experience over the years, wherever you can find a local advisor to give you international advice, and you're able to trust your local advisor, go for it. Because honestly, it's a jungle out there. And you don't expect anybody out there to be on your side. Banking isn't what it used to be when we were young, where automatically you trust your bank manager. So you head to Wall Street or some street off Wall Street. Why is he interested in you in the first place? But if you can find somebody locally whose business is to keep an eye on those things, it just lightens your load massively. So yes, I could use my second passport and go around the world investing as a second something, but I know ultimately I will work with local advisors, or I will continue to work with local advisors to plan whatever investments I want to make. There may be times when my advisors will explain that the second passport is useful. Fine, I will follow that advice. That is their business to be experts in that area. I stay in my own lane. I know where I'm an expert. And investing globally, you can lose your shirt if you don't know what you're up to. And from personal experience, you find you go out there, nobody has a reason to want to be your friend. Whilst here, we enjoy the same culture, we're all experts in our various fields. I do enjoy anybody to find advisors they can trust locally and then do what it is they want to do internationally. So I haven't answered the specific question you asked, but I've endorsed the earlier answer.
I'm sure it's approved. I'm sure it's approved. So now we've explored the benefits of having multiple citizenships. Thanks to Mr. Zubeiru, we've also explored the incentives that these same multiple citizenships also have on foreign asset investments, right? So this is my next question for Mr. Zubeiru. Obviously, clients' motivations are different. Like Mr. Osakwe said, his was mobility and leisure travel, right? But then what country is the most favorable for entrepreneurs and why? Why would you say that entrepreneurs should opt for certain countries instead of other ones?
All right, so this question is a very exciting one. In my line of work as a citizenship by investment expert, it is actually one of the most interesting questions I usually get from over 95% of my clients.
So sorry, Mr. Zubeiru, quick. This answer, I'm sorry to cut you short. I'm really excited for this as well because I know Riv Trust is the leading citizenship and residency firm in Middle East and Africa. So I know there's a wealth of data that can actually back up what you're saying. So please fire on where I'm excited to hear about this one.
Yes, so this question is very interesting especially because in our line of work, and I need to put this disclaimer out first, like Mr. Sakwe, I think said earlier, or Mirabel, many people who we sign up for our program, and I'll give you some data like Mirabel asked, many people who sign up for our second citizenship program don't have a JAPA vision, actually. Many of them are not trying to leave Nigeria, are not trying to relocate, are not trying to run away. Many of them sign up for these programs mostly to just enhance their global access, which means, and this is a track record we've also seen along this ride, and I'll tell you why it's important to the conversation. A lot of them go into international market, do business, build assets, and then repatriate a whole lot of the earnings, the technical know-how back to build businesses in Nigeria. We typically call them returnees, but these are people who are passionate about building this nation, Nigeria, that we have. And that's where the question now comes. The question is not a straightforward question to answer in the context of, oh, this is the most favorable question. It's a function of your short, medium, and long-term goals. So our first job, for example, as citizen investment expert, is to provide you advisory service on which citizenship is the best fit for you. Now, we do citizenship by investment and we do residency by investment. For some of our nationalities, because we have offices in 22 countries around the world, their passport may already be on the top 50 in the world. So they have a strong passport and they are looking to be able to expand their business reach or move their family into better economies for certain medium, short, and long-term reasons. We will look at you as a person and say, oh, based on your short, medium, and long-term goals, this residency program, maybe in Canada, will be a best fit for you. And these are the reasons why, because we understand the program and the benefits. For other people, we recognize that the major challenge they have with that global access for education, entertainment, investment, global mobility is the current passport they have, which is the identity. It will interest you to know that apart from Mauritius and Seychelles, if you look at the global passport ranking, in terms of the most powerful passports in the world, the first major African country apart from the islands of Mauritius and Seychelles is number 55. It is South Africa. Interestingly, Nigeria is 100 on that list. We are ranked alongside people like Djibouti, Yemen, Afghanistan. It paints you a picture. We only have visa-free access to 45 countries right now. It was 46 1 month ago, but they took us off their list. That makes us 45. So we've dropped down in the ranking just in the last 1 month. What is the limitation? What now does that mean? If you're trying to do business, for example, your medium to long-term goal is to do massive business exchange with a country like China, then you want to go for a citizenship that gives you visa-free access to China, allows you to build strategic relationships. And I need to mention this. When you see a country that enjoys visa-free access with another country, it is a sign that bilateral relationships have been signed between those countries to extend social economic benefits to both citizens. So it means that there are things like grant access, technical support, ease of doing business contracts that have been signed between both countries for our citizens to exchange. So if, for example, you as a global investor, you are looking to move and do business with China, you want to consider a citizenship that gives you visa-free access to China, in addition to all these other perks that that visa-free exchange has come with. Whereas some other people say, oh, my priority is to do business with Turkey. I do so much business with Turkey. I want to be able to exchange with them. Now, some countries will give you visa-free access to China, but not Turkey. And some countries will give you visa-free access to Turkey and not China. So we always say your favorite country will be a function of your short, medium, and long-term goals along security, along global mobility, along investments, among leisure and lifestyle, amongst education and entertainment. Some people want to relocate their family to Europe because they have a medium to long-term plan to have their family ultimately settle in Europe, extend their business to Europe. If that is your goal, then you probably will be looking at a certain type of citizenship that gives you maximum access in that area. My summary is the favorite country is a function of your short, medium, and long-term goals. What are you trying to achieve, not just for you, but for your children or your words in terms of legacy planning? That would determine what we would advise as a best fit for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Zuberi. So from what I understand, in a nutshell, this is a bespoke service, right?
Yes, it is a bespoke service.
And what determines what country essentially are the client's motivations? So for example, what are their goals? What are they looking to achieve long-term, short-term, and medium-term, right? So it varies for everybody because of this.
Yes, it is.
Awesome. I think that is very clear. Okay, so I would go back to Mr. Suleiman and I'll just use a scenario. So how can assuming I have a second citizenship, which I'm hoping I will get done at some point, how can my acquired citizenship, global assets, and business be properly managed and transferred to my desired beneficiaries?
Thank you, Mirabel. That's another good question. After you have sorted your welfare, that's give you the ability to move globally.
Yes.
I think it is very important you're also able to sort out your financial life affairs, which involve your businesses, your global assets. And no matter what we do, the final objective is how do we remain light at the time we retire, like Mr. Osakwe said, that how do we remain light, that we are not burdened with anything, that we have our affairs tidied up properly. In the area of citizenship, I think Reef Trust, fantastic. They have done very well in helping people and get this. And I think after that, the next thing is the wealth management provides solutions for tidying up your affairs. what do we do in wealth management? It's about estate planning, which means arranging your financial affairs for the purpose of transferring to your beneficiaries. Aside from that, we do succession planning, which is how do you transfer your business that lasts beyond you. You know, many businesses fail because when the founder dies, that's the end of it. This business needs to move to the next generation. So the role of wealth management services, which involve estate planning, legacy planning, succession business planning, business succession planning, and philanthropic planning, they are to assist you in coordinating your financial affairs. And at the end of the day, you can move those assets, your investment and businesses to your loved ones. And this is the role of a wealth manager. How can you do that? You do this by having a global view of your assets and your businesses. But you know, most of the time, when it comes to estate planning, people talk about, if I want to move my asset, having achieved the second citizenship, and I want to move my asset and businesses to my loved one, how do I go about that? The best way to go about that is through one, estate planning and succession planning. In estate planning, people use will, or people use trust. That is, I mean, you look at arrangements, you document your will, you have your will. But the best option, the best way to go about this properly is to set up a trust, a private trust that make this arrangement perfect. A private trust, now that you have second citizenship and you have investment globally, I will advise that there's something that we call an offshore trust. That is, you set up a trust offshore. You can set up a trust locally, or you can set up a trust offshore. When you set up a trust, what you are doing is that you move your assets and businesses for the management, for the trustee to help manage those assets. And again, when you set up a trust, what happens is that even if anything happened to you, you have documented, you have put up a document that allows somebody else to transfer your assets, your own personal asset, private asset, or your businesses to the next generation, to your loved one. And I think that is what estate planning does for, people like, Mr. Amzakwe, that have also retired, that have businesses, and many other people like that. And so that is how to do, to transfer assets, global assets, businesses to the next, to your loved one. You don't want to leave your business alone. You want to be sure that after you exit, the business is still running. How do you do that? You must ring fence it. You must put up a proper succession plan. Succession plan that enables you to continue. Most of the time, people believe that, my business can be managed by my family. But if you really want your business to go to the next generation, there must be a structure properly set up to advance that course. And for your own personal investment, personal and private assets, it's better you have a private trust that can be set up towards that. Because we are talking about global investment that goes beyond the local investment you have, it's always advisable that we have something that can be set up offshore that save you, that protect your assets. Protect your asset from, from local creditors, protect your asset from any form of aggressors. So I think a better way of achieving that is to have a proper estate plan, which a wealth management firm like Meristem can do for you.
Thank you so much, Sulaiman, Mr. Sulaiman. I'm sorry about that. Thank you so much, Mr. Sulaiman. So in a nutshell, an effective way to properly manage global assets is to essentially strike a fine balance between estate planning and succession planning, correct?
Correct. You must have the two together, yes.
Awesome. So we'll go back to Mr. Zubairu. So does a person need to travel at any point in time during the process to get the citizenship? And in the case of a loss of passport or expiration, how can a person get a new one?
Okay, so we as a Citizen by Investment company, we are licensed across a number of countries where we process citizenship for. Let me contextualize. The African market is predominantly favorable to processing Caribbean citizenships most times. And the reason is because Their programs are the lowest to enter. Their conditions for obtaining second citizenships are lighter, and then their price points are also more favorable in terms of more affordable for a second citizenship. The beautiful thing about their citizenship is that they have a top 33 passport in the world. Their passports are among the top 33 most powerful passports in the world. So that gives you a passport that is on the upper tier of the market, and you are able to maximize it. One major thing why the Caribbean countries are also a big sell is that these 5 Caribbean countries, for example, that we process citizenship for, which is St. Kitts and Nevis, Antigua and Barbuda, St. Lucia, Grenada, and the Commonwealth of Dominica, these countries do not, for example, require you to ever show a physical presence from the start of the process to the finish. And even when you obtain your second citizenship, they do not require you to ever physically have to come to the country, which makes it a very easy process. So you can sit down in Nigeria, start the process, meet the minimum required, provide all the documentation, make the payments. They will do a due diligence on you, process you, and once your reputation is intact, like Mr. Osakwe, when we worked with him, they will grant you a second citizenship, and you will get your passport and your certificate of registration or citizenship delivered to you right here. You are not required at any time to show up there, to go through any process. So it's a very easier program for a lot of people compared to other citizenships that require you to do a minimum stay, for example, require you to come to do biometrics and some of these other bottlenecks. So when we sit down with the client, your interest and the willingness to go over certain hurdles will determine which is the best fit for you. For top of mind, the Caribbean countries are always a best recommendation for Africans because their programs are their requirements are very friendly and do not most at any time require you to physically show up in this country to obtain citizenship. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Zuberi. So I'm just going to summarize what you just said. And what you said is that a physical presence is not required during the entire duration of the application process. And even after the citizenship has been granted, clients would not be required to visit or stay in the countries. And in the event of an expiration or a loss of passport, RIF Trust is always available to assist in processing or reissuing, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Zuberi. So back to Mr. Suleiman, what is an offshore trust and how does it protect assets exactly?
Okay, an offshore trust is just like, it's a trust set up offshore. I mentioned about a private trust. What's a trust really? A trust is an arrangement whereby you want to transfer your assets to another person who is the beneficiary. And you want somebody to hold that asset temporarily and to be able to transfer that asset later to the beneficiary. The trust arrangement is where I transfer that asset to somebody known as a trustee, and the trust with something we call a trust deed. I will document what I want, my wishes, in a trust deed. That these are the things I want to do with this asset. And this is how you should transfer this asset to the named beneficiary. It's an agreement between myself as a settlor. I'm the one putting the asset down. I'm the one called settlor. And the person I'm giving to is a trustee. The deed that documents, that cements our relationship, the document is known as a trust deed. That trust deed spells out my wishes. So a trust arrangement is where I give an asset or something, I entrust my asset to another person known as a trustee for the benefit of a beneficiary, a named beneficiary. Maybe my children, or maybe my family members, or maybe somebody outside. I just name the person in a trust document. That's a trust arrangement. Now, locally, we set up a private trust. When you believe that, at the time, you want to be light. A private trust, you move those assets to a trust deed, into trust, setting up a trust. I can also set up that trust offshore that is beyond Nigeria, my local environment. When I do that, what I'm saying that all the assets I have, both locally and globally, they come under the trust offshore. They are beyond the reach of a local environment. And so an offshore trust is a trust arrangement that you set up, but not in your local environment, but in a foreign environment. The foreign jurisdiction, the selection of that foreign environment is very, very important. Because what you are trying to achieve actually is to ensure that your assets are protected, one. Secondly, that you are also able to maintain high level of confidentiality. And also another one is that you're also able to minimize tax. Most of times now people choose, foreign jurisdiction that have little or no tax for the purpose of optimizing tax, getting tax efficiency so that they don't pay tax. This is very, very important. So an offshore trust is a trust that is set up in foreign country, in foreign jurisdiction, whereby you can get asset protection. Nobody can come and have access to your assets apart from the named beneficiary when it is time to give to them. Then secondly, you have the benefit of your investment that is not exposed so much to tax. Yes, there could be tax to the beneficiary when they are distributing those assets to those beneficiaries, but the operations you are having in those assets, in those environments, in those jurisdictions, they are safe, they are protected from tax exposure. So that is another benefit of setting up in those jurisdictions. And the next thing is that, as I said, confidentiality. In some jurisdictions, once you set up your assets, nobody knows about it. It is not even registered anyway. It is not documented about your trust arrangement is not made public in some jurisdictions. And that is why it is very important. Many of us who want privacy, we don't want our affairs to be exposed to the public. And we want to be able to transfer our assets to to our named beneficiary. Many people are afraid currently about situation globally. There is, volatility. The environment is becoming complex. The environment is not stable. There are political instability all over the world. And you are looking at an environment where you can also, you want your investment to be protected. In fact, let me give an example of a country, countries like maybe Russia or other countries that they are having forfeitures in their assets. Maybe such a client is one of those individuals that have their assets forfeited. But when you have your assets moved to an offshore trust, you have protection. And that is why an offshore trust is an important tool that many people use. Now with citizenship, that when you get your citizenship, second citizenship that are being assisted by RIF Trust, you have, the wealth management provide, assist you in setting up an offshore trust that help you to achieve asset protection, that help you to minimize your tax, and they also to achieve confidentiality. And I think this is an important tool that many people make use of. You can in those. So in one of the questions you asked earlier about businesses, how do I ensure my business can be protected, can be transferred to the next generation? You can also use an offshore trust towards achieving the same thing, because businesses can come under an offshore trust to be managed by a trustee company in that environment. We talk about BVI, British Virgin Islands, Isle of Man, some of these jurisdictions that you can actually have this offshore trust set up. There are these jurisdictions and they help in minimizing costs.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sulaiman. I think that is very clear. When you were speaking earlier, you mentioned one of the major benefits of the offshore investments is obviously the fact that your assets can be protected from whatever instability is going on locally. So we're now moving on to the question and answer part of the webinar. And so Mr. Kunle Wahid Bello asked you, he's saying, how can I start a secure offshore investment?
Well, as I said, I think one of the ways of securing offshore investment is to set up an offshore trust that can do that investment on your behalf. You can also set up as a company, as an individual with second citizenship. In some of these new, some of this country that Zubero have mentioned, I think you can set up companies in those countries because of their low to little tax environment and regime to to own companies, to own businesses, to own assets. So you can protect your asset by putting those assets under an offshore trust. So setting up a trust is a very important step towards securing your assets. Because locally, let me give you an example. Locally, if I set up a private trust locally, and the trust is buying the assets, buying my assets on my behalf. You understand it? If I want to buy assets, the trust is the one going through that process. I secure my asset. Rockefeller said that you set up trust. You can set up trust without, and have control. You don't have to bother yourself about anything. Achieve control by setting up trust. When you set up trust, you can still get control of everything you have. There's something we call a living trust. A living trust give you all it takes to manage, to control all your assets while they are not in your name. The only thing is that they are not just in your name. You are not exposed to tax. You are not exposed to creditors' aggression, but you are also able to control everything you want to control. Currently, you manage clients that the only thing that is just different is that those investments, those assets, they are not in their name. Even some they sign their signatory, but they are just not in terms of ownership of the assets, legal ownership, because they have transferred those assets into a trust. So a trust is a very viable instrument that allows you to manage while you are alive, and also to transfer assets, investment or asset to the next generation. Because all you need to do, you can imagine you live a life that while you live in that life, for the remaining part of life, you have the entire control of your assets, both local and offshore. And after death, after you exit the stage, the trust is still carrying out your wishes, your instructions. And that's the beauty of it. So you secure your assets. Most of the time you secure your assets by setting up, a trust, because you have somebody, a trustee, a corporate trustee who is responsible for overseeing what you have documented in the trust deed. It's a very fantastic and interesting arrangement. It goes beyond will. A will can be contested. Anybody can contest a will. Even when you have a will, by the time you go through the process of probating, setting up a probate, that is, you want to move the assets from your personal name to all those individuals that you have named in your will, is a rigorous exercise. You can imagine you have a trust that all you just need to do is that you set it up, you secure those assets in the trust, and the next thing that you can control both while you are alive or when you are no more.
Thank you so much, Mr. Suleiman. We've almost hit the hour mark. So I would just ask one more question to Mr. Osakwe, and this is because he has basically lived and breathed the application process and all of that. So Mr. Osakwe, how long did your application take? And did you have to take an English proficiency test or any of such when you were trying to secure your second citizenship? And overall, how was the experience?
You asked my application with what Meristem?
Sorry?
Not Meristem, with
RIF Trust. Yes.
It took about 6 months, no more, it took 8 months. There's a lot of paperwork. However, they put me through the paperwork. The one thing I don't enjoy is paperwork, filling forms, etc. But they put me through it, and I think it's safe to say it was a bit of a breeze in the end. The paperwork part takes around a month. And the rest was, you could say waiting, but I just got on with life. And eventually they called back to say, okay, it's almost ready. And then it turned out. So there's really no problem. It was fairly effortless. Of course, paying out money is never pain free, but
I'm sure
I knew what I was doing before, and I knew how much it was going to cost. I'd been informed what payments I had to make at what milestones, so there's no problem. So by and large, it went like clockwork. It was fairly straightforward. So
Thank you so much. Oh, wow, that's fantastic. So well done to the RIF Trust team. And thank you so much, Mr. Osakwe. There are other questions, but you can send an email to nigeria@riftrust.com and you will definitely get an answer. So I would love to ask the panelists for their final remarks about this session and our closing notes so that we can all carry on with our day as usual. So I'll start with Mr. Kadiri, Mr. Zubairu Kadiri, just for your final remarks, and let's call it a day.
Thank you very much, everyone, for coming. I hope we stirred up some conversations and we were able to address some gray areas. Like Mirabel said, if you want to have a client advisory session where you want us to look at your short, medium, long-term goals on what is the best fit for you in terms of getting the second citizenship, you can send an email to nigeria@rifttrust.com and we will take it from there and we will definitely reach out to you. Thank you for the opportunity to be here, and thank you to my panelists who also made it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Zubairu, and thank you so much to our esteemed panelists, Mr. Osakwe and Mr. Sulaiman. This was definitely worth the time. I'm sure that I can see some questions coming in and even via email. So I'm sure that you've kept the Rift Trust team will be busy for the next couple of days answering all these questions. So so thank you so much to our guests for also taking the time out to attend this from your busy schedule. And we definitely will be having more of these sessions to guide you on your investment portfolio and your dual citizenship process or application, if in case you want to consider that option. So thank you so much, everyone, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Thank you, Mirabel.
Thank you, Mirabel. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Osakwe, and thank you, Zubairu. Nice.
Thank you, Mr. Suleiman. Thank you, Mr. Osakwe. It was a great time. Bye.
Right.